Here.
Let's start with the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Bernard.
Here.
Mr. Fernandez.
Here.
Mr. Grady.
Here.
Mr. Holmes.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
here.
Mr. Curtis.
Here.
Chairman, you have any more?
I don't know if there's anybody. Public, I don't see anybody.
Brian Green's the IT director for the town.
Okay.
For the first item. on
So
the-
we'll go to the next item. Anybody that wants to speak, public comments? Okay, thank you. So I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of July 11, 2023 regular meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the August 15, 2023 email vote.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was a part of that, okay. Do I have to, can I vote on that, Kevin, or is that?
It's a good question.
You were part of the email?
Okay, so I didn't in favor. Okay. All right, so let's start with item one, business. Discuss the B and A report.
You guys have the material in front of you. The Leah is online. You know, the first 3 pages. First 2, you have the chart that you discussed producing, and the 3rd page would be P and L. Comparison to budget year over year. You have a Leah and a Roshan as well. You have questions? Or... Leah, I don't know if you wanted to say anything, or if you just want to field any questions they might have.
I guess just fielding questions. I feel like it might be a little self-explanatory, but I did create it, so I'm not sure if there are questions or anything that was unclear in the report, or just questions beyond the report.
We kind of showed us a little of this kind of format earlier, and this kind of just fills in, you know, the blanks. I guess on the first page, I don't really have any questions on the first page. If anyone has any questions, free to ask.
Leah, what are some of the reasons why you would not admit some? You got 82 referrals and didn't admit 31 of them, just curious.
Yep. So some are just out of our service area. So that's a pretty easy one. Some insurances we don't accept, which is limited, but that could be a reason. Also, some referrals that go out are called blast referrals, and they go to a multitude of agencies, and it's just kind of a first come, first serve for accepting it. And occasionally we just feel like there maybe like some need social work. We don't have a social worker on board, so we would have to refuse that referral. So there's a number of reasons why we wouldn't accept, but hopefully that not admitted will reduce. Some are out of our control, but.
On the sheet here, it says number of new episodes needed to meet goal 388, which is 97 for a quarter.
Yep.
If you meet your goal of 388, where does that budget wise put you apart? Revenue wise?
Yep.
Would that essentially be on budget, Leah?
What's that?
Would that essentially be on budget if you hit that metric?
So that would put us on budget for the 906.
906.
Yeah, the annual goal.
That would be the FY 23 number, this last fiscal year. Which is 200,000 above the current fiscal year.
Okay, so that's just to hit what you had budgeted, not to eat into any of the deficits or anything like that. That's just to meet the revenue.
Yeah, that's to meet the goal that was set.
And is that what your goal is?
For that last fiscal year, that was goal.
So you're not attempting to increase over what the revenue budget was.
I mean, that would be nice if we could hit 100% of the budget. But with the staffing that we have and the requirements of the amount of patients we would have to meet the full budgeted costs is not, I guess, a realistic goal for this year, I can say.
So you're saying that you don't expect to hit the revenue number.
I'm saying I don't expect to hit the total budgeted costs.
Costs or revenue?
Earlier, may I interject, Mr. Chair?
Yes,
If I
please.
may. So the numbers that you have are for the 6/30/23 quarter, and that year we had a revenue projection of 900,000. We reduced it to 700,000. So in order to hit that $700,000 revenue target, we will have to have 25 new episodes a month.
Yeah.
New episodes meaning it is a combination of recertifications and start of care. Now, if you look at July and August, those numbers are lower, and historically they have been lower for whatever reason. Summer is not a good time. So we have been, the average of July and August has been 19.6 episodes. If you take that 91,616 total revenue. So for the VNA to get back to the 700,000 for the next 10 months, Aliyah will have to hit 26 recertifications and certifications in total every month. So if you don't meet that target, the remaining months, your goal keeps going up because you had to make for the shortfall.
Yes.
Did that answer your question? I think.
Yeah, but I think maybe I'm not making my end of it clear, because one of the things we keep talking about is reducing deficits over a period of time.
Right.
And if all we're doing is setting goals, hit the budgeted amounts at this point, we're not going to be reducing over time.
So, in 2021, you were looking at a 900, not looking, you VNA close to the $907,000 deficit. 2022, 776, 23, 731. We would like to get the number, it's a combination of revenue as well as lower expenses, to get it below 700. Actually, one of the questions I have for you, for the board, actually, Mr. Chair, if you could answer this, it'll be very helpful. From the perspective of the Board of Finance, what is your end goal? Because I can tell you, zero is not, breaking even is not going to happen. But if you can tell us what is it that the Board of Finance is looking for, where you would like to land in year 2 or 3, we could come up with a plan, the combination of, hitting revenue targets and a combination of, tightening up the expenses as well to achieve that goal. So I would really appreciate if you can give that number so that we can work towards that.
But I think one of the things in my mind, just to start off with, is revenue in fiscal 23 was down $400,000 from 2019. I mean, that's $400,000 that, if we went back to revenues of 2019 level, we would be reducing the deficit by $400,000.
Yeah, but at the same time, we reduced the expenses too. So the net cost has been going down to the town.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, Ross, we've been anywhere between what, 800 and 900,000 dollars, you know, you say 772 or whatever. So I think what Jerry's asking, you know, is really, you had a goal of 97 per quarter last year, okay? Right? Now you're saying you're gonna strive for 75 per quarter in 2024, which says that's gonna hit your budget. Why not be more aggressive? You know, you could still say your budget is 75, but why not target something higher than the 75 in order to try to, you know, reduce the deficit more? Somewhere
yeah.
between 95 and 97, you know?
That is
Yeah,
the goal. They are trying for a higher number, but I'm telling you, you asked the question what the number should be to make the budget. So I'm just answering that question. Obviously, we are not going to limit ourselves to certifications of 25. If you can get to 30 or 35, we'll do it.
Yeah, we're just trying to identify the minimum to meet the revenue goal. Obviously, we would want to do more than that, and the goal is to exceed the 25 or 26 per month, but you know, we're just trying to find the minimum goal to reach. You know, obviously we do want to do better, and it is a mix of increasing revenue and decreasing costs, which we've been working on, and some of the items in the budget are variable. Like, we don't know how many physical therapy visits are going to be needed in a year, so there is a decent amount in there to be able to provide that service. But if we can reduce the costs, that's beneficial as well. So having the minimum goal or the minimum amount to meet the revenue goal, and then being mindful of costs, we're hopeful that that deficit will continue to decrease over time.
In response to your question, what does the Board of Finance want? You know, it's kind of like me throwing a dart, you know, saying, here's what I want. But I would say, next year, why don't you strive for a $500,000 loss instead of a $770,000 loss? I mean, that's just me saying it. I don't know if it's realistic, you know what I mean, Roche, but it's just me saying it. You know?
It's
Put
not.
a little more into trying to reduce it more than just 50, 100K a year. Because we've been talking about this for many, many years, and you know, it's not, you know, Aaliyah's fault, but you know, we have been talking about it for many years.
So I would say it's unrealistic in a year to get to 500. Can you get to 600 and then to 500? Something, perhaps we can put a plan together for that.
Okay.
But in 1 year to get to 500 is, you know, even I don't want to just stand here and say, yeah, sure, we can do it. It'll just please you. But that doesn't, it's not a realistic plan. So,
I didn't say it was going to be realistic. You just, you know, but that's fine. Okay.
yeah, but I
so
like
what-
to set realistic goals and targets and set the budget accordingly and try to reduce the net cost to the town.
I'm just trying to understand what's really going on from a cost of service and things like that. When we had met a while back, I mentioned to you, you know, I'd like to understand what part of this $1.45 million is not related to DNA, so to speak, in terms of work that brings in revenue. Okay, how much of it is, for lack of a better term, you know, the social aspect of having the DNA, you know, things like doing blood pressure checks over at the senior center and on and on and on and on. Are there any mandatory state of Connecticut functions that you have to do for the town that you're doing under the VNA, that even if the VNA went away, we would have to do? Okay, and why I'm asking that is because then we get to your sheet about, you know, the revenue in town, out of town, revenue in town, $130,000, and the cost of care $94,000. That sounds pretty good, except where are you accounting for the other $740,000 in the budget of the year's cost? How much? Where are they? When you look at the cost of care, you have all the overheads built into that. You can't.
Yeah,
You have a lot of costs coming in that you don't have any chance that goes to servicing the VNA. And you may not have any way of recovering it, i.e. You know, you've got some $700,000 here, that's still cost of care. There's still overheads associated with, so a dollar of, you know, a nurse going out there, if you got another dollar tacked on for back office function, that's the cost of care. You know, so that's the stuff that we should be seeing here, and that's the part I need to understand, how much of that $1.4 million should not be part of that equation. And then we can have a meaningful conversation of where you should be going.
All the numbers should go to.
Because I mean, setting a goal of a $700,000 target with a $1.4 million, I don't know where that came from. What's the point of that? I mean, if you know, if your budget is 1.4 million and you come back and tell me that $1 million of that is for cost of service to these clients on the outside, then your revenue budget should be $1 million. Period.
so
Because we
Leah, you can
factored
answer
all
this.
the other things out that you need to do for other reasons. But that's your break-even point, $1 million, not 700,000. I'm not saying you can get there, but that should be where you're striving to get to over the next several years.
So we asked that question. The short answer is it's negligible. If the VNA was not there, you won't be doing any of this other nonsense that we're talking about. So I would attribute, Leah, you can correct me, the last time we had this conversation, entire cost is pretty much the VNA. I'm looking at
So,
you.
so my,
There's a
Can-
lot
can I ask a question
where
on
the
this
other
here?
700,000's going, from my perspective.
It's a volume short,
Pardon?
it's a volume short. So you're
You
getting,
you can't be stating over here that my revenue is $130,000, my cost of care was 94,000. That doesn't equate to the $1.4 million.
well, it does if your volume is short, it's not allocating the cost back. It's saying
It has to be allocating the cost back.
this is an operational view
Okay.
rather than applying it back. So as Aaliyah goes in and looks at a patient and evaluates, should we take this or not? It's with an understanding of what is the fully loaded cost, the true variable cost of that nurse, physical therapist, whatever it might be, plus an element of overhead. So as she goes through the year, she's not going to know whether the 97 is hit or 197. So there's an assumed overhead factor every time a nurse goes out and works for the patient.
Okay.
There are folks sitting back here doing the work. If the volume is short, then you're never gonna actually catch to that amount. Now, we could come back at the end of the year and say, well, then the reality is that revenue was attributable to, you know, the actual cost would have been 94,000. Because it was short, that number might be 200,000. What that would basically be doing is just taking our P&L and forcing it back in. This is trying to give Aaliyah a tool to look at decisions in and out of Berlin, should we take this patient? Evaluating insurance companies and the like. For a period of time, up until about 3 years ago, one of the things that you mentioned did exist. The annual flu shots for town employees that are offered through the Central Connecticut Health District was actually being offered by the VNA. And that service stopped and is now through CCHD. And that cost is no longer sitting in the VNA's books. There used to be, if we went back about 3 or 4 years, there would actually be an expense line for vaccinations. And it was the cost of actually offering that. So all of those things have been reviewed and weeded out so that it's a true cost of actually running the VNA. But the challenge becomes from a managerial and operational standpoint, when Aaliyah's looking at a patient or potential patient in July, August, September, she has to look at it as what is a reasonable cost, the direct cost of sending that nurse out there, based on an assumption that the nurse will not be 80, 85, 90, 95, whatever percent, there will be some downtime. And then there's an element of how much of this overhead do I want? But it wouldn't be appropriate to say, take the person who handles billing and apply all of her costs to a small number of patients. That wouldn't be fair either. Because if you did that in July or September, you would say, I'm not gonna take any patients. So the goal is to figure out what
So
do we
you don't have to do it on a cost per monthly basis, but you should do it on over a year. I mean, if I have a thousand patients, and I send out 1,000 bills, we know the cost per bill is going to be X amount of dollars, and that's what should be built into the overhead. So when you're all said and done at the end of the year,
at
it
the
should
end,
all add up to $1.4 million.
and at the end of the year, we do that. Last year, actually, Aaliyah and I sat together to say, what's the actual, if we took the cost and broke it down and said, how much of the cost is revenue generating functions versus non-revenue generating? So, hate to pick on her, but Aaliyah, for example, would be a non-revenue generating function. It's a necessity, but it's a non-revenue generating function. So
So these are then the things that you start to drill down on over a couple years. Like I'm running a business,
Yep.
and all of a sudden I get to the end of the year, it's like, Jesus, my cost of billing is, $20 a bill. My peers are $15 a bill. Maybe that's a function I ought to think about outsourcing, or I gotta find a way, or I need to take an in-depth look at that. Why is my cost so high on that function when benchmarks or whatever?
actually, Aaliyah did that, but actually in the opposite effect. Previous to her arrival, they had outsourced billing. And what Aaliyah found was if she took an existing staff person and invested a little bit of money into training, it was actually much less
I'm
costly.
not looking
No,
for,
no, no.
I know, and I understand that, and that's good, that's a great job.
Those are the
But
things.
that's what's gotta be done across the $740
And
million
those things are happening,
that's missing.
for example, in this past budget, we talked about $100,000 cost reduction. You're not gonna see that in the numbers right now, because the benefit will be realized in the second half of the year. The person who's doing that function will retire in December. That way there was an opportunity to cross-train and not leave the unit. So when you look at the year-to-date results through August, you're not seeing some of that benefit in the numbers. Those things are happening. The analysis is happening, and the questions are being asked of what can we weed out? Similarly, Aaliyah is asking the question, where are additional revenue streams? Where are opportunities for the group to generate additional revenue? But also recognizing that, looking at it on a, they say it, these are people, but a per unit basis, that you're not getting $1 of revenue for $10 of cost. So they are happening. Lee, I'm sorry if I jumped in for you.
I'm not quite sure how you answered my question, other than explaining kind of what's going on, but I'm talking about from the business model perspective, where's the rest of the cost? How do you attribute it? How do you track it somehow to give us some indication of whether you're doing a good job, or to give yourself an indication whether you're doing a good job in that area. And those become areas of opportunity if you're not. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, all I'm
And the
saying
other
is,
thing is like, we don't wanna get hung up from the perspective on July and August, well, that's whatever. Don't do straight line budgeting, do as far as, you do month by month budgeting, So I would expect the revenues in March to be much higher than the revenues in August. That's what it should, lay it out the way it is.
Well,
not.
and all I'm saying
It's
is,
so easy way to do it, straight line stuff, when then it doesn't make any sense, and you confuse yourself because now you're running shortfalls in a couple of months and you look bad.
know
You shouldn't
where
be
the
looking
issues
bad.
are. The challenge is, there are certain elements that are required within the business. We can turn and saddle each patient with those full costs, and you're gonna end up with a substantial negative, but the
I
fact
didn't
is,
say necessarily to do that,
Yeah.
identify those components, and those are just as important to track as the revenue coming in from the patient visit, because it's half your money.
and those
Right.
are being
It's
done.
more than half your money.
Those are being done, but the challenge is, you're not growing the top line. There are certain cost elements that just exist.
So
And if
my
we don't have enough
argument
volume-
is.
Well, when, can I
You're
interject
not-
for a second here? We went through this 2 years ago now, and I had asked a question about why we weren't looking at Westbrook VNA as an example, and I was told by Aaliyah that she wasn't even interested in looking at their model. This was a successful model that wasn't losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they staff it differently. We don't want to look at it because of personalities. I mean, something's got to be done here. We're doing the same thing. This VNA is being run operationally. It's being run exactly the same, and nothing. Why would you expect different results? We have to look at this in a whole different way. Because something is seriously wrong here if we're losing this kind of money, no matter what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear what everyone's saying. The bottom line, George, is that whereas based on these revenue levels, what you really have is a monthly unabsorbed cost every month. Basically, that's what you have. You can't absorb it in any kind of revenue.
I understand that, I'd like to see it categorized, I'd like to see it categorized a little better.
Yeah.
To see the areas where improvements needed and you can, you know, if one aspect, break it down into your processes or however you wanna do it, or in your basic activities that go along with it. I don't need it granular to the, you know, to 25 items, but can you, those things, is it 3 or 4 items, and just track it a little bit, you know?
And we are tracking it, we can share with you the tracking.
Does the DNA have the staff that can handle those things? They can break it down on a monthly basis, Kevin Williams said to us, like, we're looking at
Well, that's
stuff
a good point.
for April through June, what's September? Like, these numbers, great, when's September?
The ability to track the expenditures is available, that's not even necessarily a P&A element, because you're dealing with substantial fixed costs. Where the challenge becomes is being able to get into that level of granular detail by patient. Just the data doesn't exist. I mean, Aaliyah, I don't know if you want to talk about, we talked about what data is available within the traditional system, and they're using a traditional system. It's not like the DNA is, they're using an Abacus or something. So I don't.
Well, not get nice. I guess the question is, what else can we help them with? Is there anything that we can help?
Is
So
there
are you-
anything you
can
can
help?
help with? Well, I can tell you what our key problem is, that we are a very small agency with a $6,000 advertising budget, and we're competing against conglomerate home care agencies like Hartford Healthcare, who have billboards screaming the highways, and it's hard to get the word out that we even exist. So the problem is spreading the word. So how can you help? Tell everybody to use the Berlin VNA, be a supporter of the Berlin VNA, drive us referrals, and we'll have better outcomes. That's the problem. And the problem is that the marketing that we can do with the limited budget that we have, we can't afford billboards. We can't afford TV ads every 2 minutes on, you know, local TV. That's not realistic for us. And so it's meeting in person, talking with people, and it's slow progress with the limited staff that we have and the limited budget, and being as modest in spending as we can possibly be. And it's just going to take time. And I hate to say that because I'm a very impatient person and I wanted to meet the budget completely 100% yesterday. That's just not a reality. And if you're talking about like meeting the full budgeted cost, that's beyond what our staff can do with the level of staff that we have. And I'm talking about, you know, the budgeted 1.5. So that's our biggest problem, is a lack of advertising funding and a lack of knowledge that we're here. And that's our #1 issue. And we can rip apart the budget and decrease the budget and be as mindful as possible. But if the referrals don't come in, we cannot generate revenue. And that's the problem.
Well,
And we're working on that every day. We're working on it.
I see your point of view, but on the flip side, I also see that you guys turned away 31 people.
Well, we didn't turn away 31 people. Like I said, some are out of our service area. I can't go outside of our service area. I can't take people who have, you know, Connecticut's an insurance we don't take. Cigna's an insurance we're not contracted with. We've been trying to reach out to those insurance companies and have contracts with them, and it's not come through. And so I'm going to take zero money if I accept those patients. And like I said, some are blasts that go literally to every home care agency in the state. And sometimes other places pick them up first. And if we can't meet the patient's need, then we can't take them either. So we can't take 100% of the referrals that we get. That's just that doesn't happen anywhere. That's not realistic.
May I ask you why those companies won't take us?
I don't know. I reached out to Cigna because actually the town switched insurance from Anthem to Cigna, and I felt it was very important to be able to provide care to our coworkers if that was needed. And I got, yeah, we'll talk about it from 3 different people, and it just never came. So it's something we're still working on, but I can't really force their hand into a contract. So those are things that we've been working on, but it's just going to take some time. And like I said, I hate to say that, but that's just the reality of it.
Can I ask? And it sort of refers back to the new episodes and
Okay.
So when we have the episodes for, say, the current year at 70 something per quarter, I think it is. I think it's 75.
Yeah, quarter
So-
report.
So if we hit 75, new episodes, do you have the staff to handle that?
Yes,
And do you have more than enough staff to handle that?
so we do have a good staff of per diem nurses that I have grown over the time that I've been here. So we do have additional nurses that we can send out. We are down to the 2 home health aides and have had a lot of difficulty in even getting resumes for a per diem home health aide. That's been posted for months and we've gotten nothing. And we just actually lost a therapist, so we're in the search for another physical therapist, but the staff is hoping to have more patients to see, and we definitely, on a nursing perspective, can handle that.
Thank you.
I think we could move on. Thank you. Thank you, Leo.
Thank you.
All right. Item 2, Jerry, can you make a motion?
Sure, move to appropriate $920,000 of fiscal year 2024 general fund unassigned fund balance to fund police computer equipment, $50,000. Police vehicles, $200,000, dump truck body replacements, $275,000, pickup trucks, $65,000, school vans, $125,000, school cameras, $195,000, and bridge replacements at Timberland Golf Course, $10,000.
Is there a second?
Second,
Discussion?
I have a question. Sure. Kevin, all of these things were on the list of what we had originally left in the original budget, I believe.
Yes, on the
Yeah.
original budget, yes.
Yeah, okay, do you happen to have the list here to tell me what didn't make it? Cause I believe that was like $1,080,000. Or something around
Or you
there.
mean the one that was sent to the council?
Yeah. I was just wondering what didn't make their cut.
And nothing was actually rejected, they tabled a number of items. What didn't come forward, school vans was reduced from 140,000 to 125,000. And that was based on the fact that that's the cost to pay for the 2 vans that they already have on order. The block slab on groundwater at Berlin High School, so dealing with moisture, the old section of Berlin High School, 200,000 was tabled pending PVC work. PVC has hired a consultant or got funding at the last meeting, will be hiring a consultant to dig deeper into what the issue is and identify a cause and solution and then come back. 15,000 for the consultant. The ballast blocks, the 50,000 was held off. Counselor Vanessa has a relationship with the concrete company, so he would like to have a conversation with them as they're basically saying that they're 7 years old and they're not covered, and he just believe that should be the case. So it's kind of a hold off at this point.
so is Charlie thinking that that cement should not have been breaking down?
Yes, it shouldn't have been.
It shouldn't have been.
200,000 for the town clerk assessor office renovations that just wasn't discussed. The grounds, all 3 of those, so $75,000 to resurface the basketball tennis courts.
Now you're beyond the $1,070,000.
Yeah.
No, 250 and the 200, now that's 450 for facilities.
Well, we have 920.
Yep.
So we're only talking about 100.
You just wanted the first tier items?
Yeah, right, that's what we left in the budget the first time
Oh,
through.
I'm sorry.
It's just tier one.
It's basically 200,000 for the water problems at
The wa-
high school.
The high school and the
And I
Block
think
slab,
the
block
other thing is the
slab.
Timberland
Yes.
golf course was for 50,000 initially.
And they reduced it to 10 to hire, and they're hiring an engineer to determine exactly the best bridge layout to do.
So is this one bridge compared to 5?
No, this is just engineering costs.
Just
No
engineering.
bridges.
Okay, that's engineering. Okay.
So the eventuality is that they're gonna come back at us asking for more money for the bridges.
Well, the intent is to use LoCIP money. LoCIP is a state grant. It's in the state budget. Every single year, each community is allocated an amount of money. It builds up, so if you don't use it in a given year, it continues. The town has used it the last 3 cycles for leaking roofs. And those have not been fixed. So there is money there right now, about $327,000 that the town still has for its LoCIP allocation. The idea would be to come back, try to use the LoCIP to replace those 7 bridges. OPM, the expert at OPM who's responsible for this, has confirmed that it can be done, that it's permitted under the LoCIP guidelines. And then, so that would be the intent, to use the money there, but this step is to do the engineering so that we get the best answer for the bridges.
So we don't know how much it may cost.
No, right now, the estimate is somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 to 350,000, but we're looking for a solution of about 250 ideally.
Thank you.
So Kevin, a couple questions I have. One, on the police computer equipment.
Yeah.
There's an installation expense. Is that part of the capital or is that expense? That's part of overhead.
Typically, that would be part of the overall capital package. The most updated cost is a little bit over 50,000, so we're gonna be tapping into a little bit of
That's what I
police
was asking the
equipment
question,
money.
that's why. Okay, so that's part. And then on the school vans,
Yes,
I looked at the backup, it said there's 2 vans for a total of 81,000. Plus a passenger wagon for 41,000, is that what that can comprise of, or is that my?
actually, are you still on? I'm not sure if she's still on.
Maybe I misread it, Kevin, but I just looked at the backup and the quotations.
I know that when they had it at the council meeting, the discussion was 125,000 encumbered. For the 2 vans.
Initially, it was 140 for 3 vans, right?
It was, that was based on prior purchase activity and it assumed inflation rates. Yeah. And the numbers.
Okay, I looked at the backup and it had 2 vans for 81 and then a passenger wagon for 42. I wasn't sure whether it's, maybe I was misreading that.
I know that when Mr. Kugno was speaking at the council meeting, he said that the 125 is what was encumbered today for the 2 vans.
I didn't see it in the quotes, that's all. Then the other thing is on the school cameras.
Yes.
There is one item called portable radios. In there. And there's 60 portable radios, I guess, being purchased. We know what those are for.
The portable radios that are used are for intra-district communication. So they don't want to be on the police wavelength, but they want the ability to communicate without, going on a cell phone or something like that. They do have them. They originally got them through a security grant, probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And this is so that the armed security guards, the security director, but also folks like the principals and others at the school, if an issue arises, can quickly get access. We learned, unfortunately, very quickly this weekend, when the phones go down,
Yeah.
the phones go down.
No, it just because the actual quote said for PPS, which is for pupil personnel, like psychologists and social workers, so I wasn't sure. I was just asking the question, is that what they're buying them for? So.
I don't know the exact people,
Okay.
but there are a number of them throughout the district. And just so you guys know, these 2 are likely to continue appearing every year on the capital plan. This is a main focus. It's not the exclusive. The main focus is to upgrade the high school cameras. Those are some of the oldest ones that are not in line with where the other schools, because they were done later. So some of this is to bring consistency, which helps in terms of servicing, but it also helps in interoperability. And then the vans, you know, I included in here what we saw with the budget, and you'll get an updated story of that. But there are a number of vans that are quite old and have quite a bit of well into six-figure mileage. So those are gonna be on for a little bit.
Any other questions? Okay, I guess I just want clarification on the vans. No, never. But I'll make, let's have a motion.
Yeah, I already made the motion.
And second.
So what is that, how much is our general fund rating, our fund balance rating? Well,
Can I ask one quick question here?
Yes. Well, that's one question at a time. Go ahead.
Now, this is a lump sum that's gonna be put aside for this, but these projects will come before on a per item basis, correct?
This would be just the funding, the actual projects, because of the magnitude of what's being purchased, needs to get approved by the town council. The one exception I would say to that would be the school vans, only because they've already been ordered, a purchase order is already in place. And the intent is for this money to be used instead of the grant money that was used just as a placeholder for the vans. So that money would go back so that the board would take the grant money
Okay.
for its intended purpose.
Yeah, I listened to the town council meeting. I just wanted to make sure I heard it right.
Yeah, okay. So the audited result was just over $13 million at 6/30/2022. Based on where we stand today, the ledger has been turned over to the auditors and all of the non-budgeted appropriations, as well as the items appropriated for next year. Coming into this, it would be about 15.1 million. So, you know, that's about 15% of the just shy $100 million budget.
I'm you said 13 million, then you said 15.
13 million was coming into the year, 6/30/22.
Oh.
Yeah, and then we went through the year. You know, the one thing I was gonna do it during the finance director update, and I'll do it now, is the council did talk about the police station renovation project. And one of the things that was discussed, and the mayor put it out there at the last council meeting, and it had head nods from everybody, wasn't an actual formal vote, but to appropriate $1 million of fund balance to help with the cost of the police station renovations, and then utilize bonding for the balance, with one additional caveat that Donna Beach, as state rep Donna Beach, was on the call, that she is still trying to obtain state funding. At the next council meeting, so next Tuesday, there will be a motion to call a town meeting to appropriate the $1 million, and to call a public hearing for October 2nd for 3.7 million of bonding, which would get the total cumulative amount for the project of 5 million in authorized funding is what's asked for. The bids are to be opened in October. So I give you those numbers just with the knowledge that the council is looking at using $1 million of the fund balance to help with the police station project.
So they're looking at 5 million?
Well, there's already 300,000 that was already appropriated. That was for architectural.
yeah,
Then the
What's their threshold for referendum?
I thought it was 3.9, unless having talked about the project cost.
The current projection is between 3 and 4 million.
Okay.
But that's a current projection.
So we're talking about just bonding for incidentals or anything of that nature.
This would only be bond authorization. This wouldn't be the actual bond. This would be authorization so that in the event the bids open higher, which actually unfortunately happens quite a bit, there would be enough room to be able to award the bid. If the bids came in on the low end and it was $3 million and we had 1 million fund balance, then in theory, the bond would be $2 million actually bonded.
So they're making up a bond authorization vote next week.
Well, the motion will be made there. The council has to.
So obviously that has to come to us after.
So to be, the next week would just be to call the public hearing for the bonding. And the town meeting on October 2nd before the council meeting for the $1 million non-budgeted. So the town meeting will vote on the million, there'll be a public hearing, and then if the council votes either or both of those in favor, then it would come to you at your meeting in October. And if you're in favor of both of those, then they would be approved and the funding would be in place coincident with opening up the bond, opening up the bids for the police station.
Don't you think we should be having communication between the council and us regarding bond issues? I mean, this seems to me, it just not a good.
No, it's not.
You know, we're talking about large projects here. We have to consider fund balance. We don't want them just voting on stuff and then we do our own homework and everything. I mean, it just seems we should be talking before.
Yeah. So, on the, know by now whether or not the state can help us.
Well,
Station.
there was an effort that was undergoing throughout the budget process we were funding. That didn't materialize, but again, Representative, you bring that hat on, is continuing to try. You know, there are opportunities, when the budget's adopted, there are often grants, various state agencies that cover a broad purpose. You know, there was a grant, for example, that the former speaker was able to secure for Piscataway Field. That was money that wasn't designed for a Piscataway Field, but it was broad enough to cover those. And he went in and asked for some of that money to be dedicated to the project. So Representative Veach is, that I'm just trying to distinguish between the town councilor, is trying to see if those opportunities exist. But we need to move forward considering that the bids are intended to go out soon, hopefully, and be open in October. So we're trying to move in parallel with all of these things so that the town has an appropriate balance, can avoid the bid and move forward with the project.
So,
I agree with you 100%, Jerry. It would be great to.
so the capital projects that went up to town council was about 1.7 million, right? About more than this number right here.
Yes,
So now we're talking about another $1 million with fund balance. We're talking 2.7 million higher, like all of a sudden. Like,
I mean, realistically, if you were to do all of what went to the council.
Yep.
And the $1 million, and you put aside money for in the event that we hire all the police officers that were not in the budget, so
Yep.
everything goes in there. You would be at about 12% of the current year operating budget. So above the 11% floor,
we have 12 million.
Steve Wilson thinks that police hiring is gonna happen this year too.
they're
So
actively
since
trying.
they moved to the defined pension, they're getting a lot of inquiries, they're getting a lot of offers from other towns interested in coming here. They've already hired a couple. He's very optimistic.
Now, we do have some unexpected vacancies in some other departments. So when that happens, periodically I go in and encumber money with the intent of trying to, like a better phrase, squirrel money away to avoid having to use fund balance if we can save this year. But I will say, you guys, you know, I'll give you the preview. No big surprise. We talked about this during the last budget season, but we're below the motor vehicle cap, which means the $597,000 that this year's budget has for revenue in pilot from the state of Connecticut will not repeat itself. We're below, so there's no real caps. You've got costs of additional police officers that were not in the budget, so once they're hired, even if we can fund them this year. Even if we can fund them this year, they will be new in the budget next year. So there are some numbers there in the budget to consider. Ideally, the Council and Board of Finance would discuss these together. And we would love it.
We had a discussion last year regarding capital and everything together as a team. I don't see why we can't do that again. I mean, you're the middle person in between us and the town council too. You know, I mean, let's make sure that happens with us, and I'll be glad to talk to the mayor, because they can't make those kind of decisions without let's looking at the total picture, which we do. You know what I mean? So we just need to look at it in totality amongst us and say, is this the right thing to do? You know?
Yeah.
I'll be glad to call a meeting, you know. When's the vote on the bonding?
Well, the vote, if they choose to vote for it, would be at the October 16th meeting, because it would be the second, would be the public hearing, so 14 days after that.
But I mean, if they're already going through calling for a public hearing, in their mind, it's done.
Yeah, exactly, it's like that's, you're just wasting my breath right now.
Well, not necessarily, because we brought forward a bond ordinance calling for a public hearing earlier in the year, and the council said we don't want to go forward with the police station. So the council could choose to do that. The challenge becomes if you don't have the bond ordinance and you don't appropriate the fund balance, there's no appropriation for me to issue a purchase order and actually say, we can award a contract, but we can't actually give them anything on it because we have no funding in place to pay for it.
I see that, but we're the ones trying to figure out different ways of getting stuff done versus like, oh, we're gonna go this way, and it's one way to do it.
I completely understand. I will say for myself, and I did have a conversation with the town manager, that neither one of us were actually aware of the $1 million until the actual meeting when it was brought up. So that was it was a surprise to me. I mean, Mayor doesn't have to talk to me about that stuff, but it was a surprise.
And a splash pad.
So I mean, I will talk to the town manager and try to work straight.
What about the mayor?
Yes.
All right, so, those in favor of item 2?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. We'll move. All right, item 3,
No, he's on his top left.
The iPhone.
This one, the plan of conservation and development is complete, it's been adopted, and one of the recommendations within that was to create this implementation committee, this implementation group that would meet periodically, quarterly, or if that frequency is too much or too little, kind of adjust. And one of the things they asked for was representation from various boards and commissions. Board of Finance was an obvious one to include since, as you guys just pointed out, you're trying to figure out the budget implementation always requires money. They asked for one member. They obviously will be welcome to any member. I did ask.
I thought that we couldn't join boards and commissions.
We can.
Okay.
I mean, I was on the Affordable Housing Commission and found out later I was not supposed to be on that.
Yes, so like, why?
Is it-
don't know.
Is this like a liaison?
If it's official, we can't join.
That's kind of how I'm reading
I
it.
don't,
It's
I,
official.
Now, this is
reading
an
it as-
implementation committee. I don't know if
Okay,
it's
not a committee,
Yeah.
okay.
I know it was brought up and voted on by the council and town attorney was on, but no comment was made. Certainly if you're not allowed, then whatever is done. I did ask,
We probably should get some clarification on it. Because it came up with the charter revision too.
Exactly, it got
Originally,
blown up,
come
yeah.
up, it all blew up on us.
okay,
Well,
That was a commission. What, the other one was a commission.
well, anyways,
I think,
it's okay. It's okay.
I think the town attorney on this had said that because it was advisory, it wouldn't be an issue, but I would clarify with him. Because it doesn't have, it's not a committee that has any power, it's strictly advisory.
and I'll check,
But that was the language though, on the charter revision, that we could even like join different boards and commissions. I agree. It speeds up the entire process.
well, I'll confirm with the town attorney and make sure, you know, if it is permitted, I did ask, obviously they will take any member, I'm very happy with everybody's participation. Given the background with planning and zoning, given the background with affordable housing, the name that did come up was George. But anybody who is interested and willing and would like to do it, they would welcome.
You were the right fit.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, George.
I just, listen, my point is this, like, yeah, absolutely, I think we're all unanimous on that one, that George's gonna be the red, it gets to the red. But if it turns out that he can't, then all the work they'll be doing.
Oh, no, I'm gonna send a note to the attorney and
All right.
confirm it tomorrow. There's not, this is, all the boards and commissions are trying to pick different people. Nothing would happen certainly in the next 24, 48 hours before getting confirmation on that. So is everyone, you good, George?
Doing what you wanna get board on it, or-
You have to vote on this?
It's up to you guys as to how you.
I think we're unanimous, pretty much.
We volunteer George.
Never gets time, people are quick to do for something.
No, he was on that other.
No, I mean, it makes perfect
He was
sense.
legally on the other commission, but that's okay. All right, so, next item, I told Kevin to put it on because it's been a while, just wanted to know where we stand on the closing out the high school project with the state. I know there is some funding coming with that. I thought it was in the neighborhood of 2.5 million or so that would come back to us.
Don said the other day, it's like 3 or
This
something.
place is expensive, but I don't see nothing else out there.
Just over 2.9 million is the net amount. This was the actual filing that was done. The state process is variable. Some departments are very quick in dealing with things. The Office of School Construction is slower than most. I'll be nice about that. It has always historically taken typically years to close these out. Since COVID, I hate to say it as a taxpayer of Connecticut, but since the FBI investigation, and then the follow-up leader lasted for a couple of months and decided to leave, ironically, because of the pace of government in Connecticut. Things have moved a little slower. I continue to be engaged with the group. But I would not bank on that money in the near term by any means.
I'm just curious.
We did get a letter, I do have good news, we did get a letter in June that the security vestibule project was approved by the audit group, it was ready to go in the next batch for reimbursement. I have sent 5 emails since that time, trying to figure out when the next batch is, because we still don't have the money. So to give you some perspective on even when we get to the point of being audited, even when we're through it, it's probably even going to be a period after that before we actually see the money. Jerry, you've done a lot of these, I don't know if that's inconsistent with what you've seen.
I don't know, have they changed the law that at one time, when you were ready for audit, if they couldn't do your audit within 6 months, you could go out and hire your own?
I don't know, I can.
That was in the law at one time, I don't know if they, I've been away from it for a couple of years now. But that was to help with their backlog too.
It kind of sounds like we're still years away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I would say yes.
Okay. All right. Next item 5 is really, we talked about more participation on that capital planning group. And I just wanted to know, where are we today in terms of this committee and.
Yep. So the town manager's budget directive went out on September 5th, right after Labor Day, which lays out the timeline for the whole budget process through March 1st when the budget is submitted. Now that we have at least this group of capital items set and we can begin to move from there, we try to make sure that the prior year requests are finalized, approved or not. So we don't want to come back and ask for something that was just approved. So the existing capital plan with these updates will be going out by September 30th, with departments to reply back by October 13th. So a couple of weeks to either update timing, amounts, add items, what have you, and then go through. The intent is for the capital committee to meet somewhere either late October or first half of November to go through the plan. The directive also included an additional element that if items are submitted and they don't either have quotes, bids, some sort of reasonable cost estimate, like previous vehicles that were purchased, that we know there's a cadence with a reasonable inflationary rate. If there's not something substantive to go on, then the item will automatically be pushed to FY26 or later. That we're not even gonna bring it forward if there's not something of substance to go behind, not just a swag or a placeholder. So that's part of the reason people kind of thinking about it now. I would expect by early to mid-November, we'll be meeting and go through the items.
So right now, Tim Grady's the committee, and he had asked maybe another person from the Board of Finance and things, so that there's 2.
Yep, if you go over 2, then it becomes a meeting and you've got problems, so 2 would be okay.
So I'm okay with a second person from the Board of Finance to attend those meetings.
I expressed interest, but if everybody, if somebody else is, that's fine too.
Is there any?
I mean, we also have a new member coming in early November.
And you don't have to decide now. I mean, what we can do is,
No, I'm okay with deciding on somebody that's already part of
Yeah.
our group now.
do you want, I mean,
I'll do it. I don't know if Raul or
I'm not gonna likely be around those days, we're gonna be traveling. So,
I'm more than happy
Okay.
to do it with Tim.
so on those meetings, what is exactly being discussed? The items that are left, that have been left from the 1.7 list?
As
Or
well as
all
any
changes?
items, if you look at the capital plan, there were items already put in for FY 25. There are vehicles that need replacing, there are different projects. There are everything from playgrounds to fields, buildings. So, and the idea behind it is evaluating whether items should be on the list and for FY 25, should they be later on? And then for those items that are on 25, then going through and prioritizing so that we can come back and determine the highest priorities around public safety, overall value to the community, ability to fund.
That's a big one, ability to fund.
Or ability to obtain. I mean,
No.
Jim's sitting here, and vehicles can often be very hard to get.
Gotta be a certain time.
That's what comes to us in March, April time.
I know, my mind right now is thinking that. And this is me just being very frank and you guys understand. Whatever it gets decided is condensed when it comes to us, it should be part of the budget. Like, we can't keep dipping into the fund balance, keep doing this, this.
We tried last year.
Yeah, but we end up with 12 million, more or less, right? If we decide to do all these things, and just remind us next year already, we're like, just can keep dipping into fund balance.
I agree. I think last year we had a little bit of an anomaly with all the interest earnings that came in. Not a normal thing.
No, I agree with you. I think we've all had I mean, all of us, entire students of the entire town. We all had to pay taxes, but I just don't like spending saving. Could be another good point.
I mean, I think, just the final point, the amount of surplus that we've experienced in the last several years is, way beyond. Well,
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think the math for even for the Board of Ed, having known what the final amount would have been. I think we all can agree on this, that just the amounts be different for everybody. But that's also one of the things that we are not gonna have that for next year.
No,
So,
we, in general, we all agree that capital should be in the budget, so that we
Yeah.
every year we can at least plan for some of it. Okay. All right, so the next item is, a letter that I submitted to the Board of Education. One of the things that I, decided to do every year, okay, the Board of Education comes in with a proposed budget request. Okay. And we end up negotiating something considerably less, really, we come in between 5% and 6%. We give them we approve an operating budget anywhere between 2% and 300%. So what I decided this year is, rather than wait till the end of the fiscal year and figure out, well, how are we gonna end up coming, out with the Board of Education? I wanted some information with respect to, if they offered if they wanted 5.8%, we gave them 3.6% as a budget. Then did they cut anything in order to get to the 3.6%? These are just budget related questions. I'm not trying to tell them how they expended, how they should expend their money, how they should, I mean, there's in the email back from Julia, president of BOE, she says, BOE has this discretion how those funds should be expended. The Board of Finance has no authority to dictate how the Board of Education expends its appropriation. That the questions posed in my letter delve into education and operation matters that are not within the province of the Board of Finance. I'm not telling the Board of Education how to spend their money, how to appropriate their money. when the Board of Education president gets up, right, and says, we start off with a 5.8% budget, and here's all the cuts that we have to make to teachers and expenses for the public and the Board of Finance, all I'm asking is, what did you cut in order to get to the 3.6%? So there's clarity for us, and as we go forward from a Board of Finance standpoint, we have a better understanding how to move forward from a budget perspective. This gets publicly told to all the public and the Board of Finance. It said, here's the 5.8% that I request, and if you get me to 3.6, here's the reductions I'm gonna make. Okay, this is part of the Board of Education package. So all I'm asking is, did they make any cuts? And if they didn't make any cuts, how are they absorbing those costs? Simple question. You know, it's all a budgetary question. I'm not telling them how to spend the money, how to appropriate the money. I want to have clarity for the Board of Finance, and I want to have clarity for the public. Period. And they, in the memorandum, in the response back to me, they're saying, we're not gonna respond to you.
So if he turned around and said, I'm not sure what this page is, but. If this was the 3.6 and she turned around and said, we did option 7. Then that would have satisfied it?
Yeah. Or what did they do? I mean, I'm just trying to understand it from a perspective that. Every year, they ask for a certain amount, we give a lower amount, and then but they also even have surplus with the lower amount. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, you know what I'm saying? And we all know that. I mean, if I look at, we just closed out FY 23, Board of Education just closed out FY 23. Okay, I have the information here. They had a budget of $49 million for FY 23, okay, which was a 2.5% increase from the prior year. We gained 2.5%.
You count for 2023.
2023. That year they asked for almost 5%, 4.7%. The end result of their fiscal year 23, they have surplus of 400. And I don't have any problem with surplus, okay? But even to the 2.5%, they have surplus of $443,000, okay, which is stated right on the report. On top of that, there's another $675,000 of unexpended open choice grant money. So that's over $1 million they have left over when we give them 2.5%, and they ask for 4.6%. So all I'm really asking is, tell me what you did from the 5.8% to the 3.6% that we gave you. And that's all I'm asking. I'm not asking a hard question. Now, there was another issue also with the monthly report that we got. I asked for the final closeout report for fiscal year 23, and when I sent it over, I just got the first page, not the second page. And the first page is the expenditure page, the second page is the grant page. So I went directly to Ashley, and I CC'd the superintendent and the president to ask for the second page. Apparently, that's against, you know, the rules that I didn't go directly to the president in an email, so, but they were CC'd on. Bottom line is it's a standard report. You know, there was a, you know, if it wasn't an omission, I wouldn't even brought it up. The bottom line, why didn't they give me the second page to begin with? I don't know that, you know, so all I did was ask for the second page, which then became available, period. But it's a standard report. I mean, in the protocol, who to go with, I mean, I deal with Kevin all the time. I don't have to go to Roche every time I ask Kevin a question. There's no reason why I can't go to the finance director at the Board of Education and ask finance questions.
Would be like you have to go to the town council to ask them to ask Kevin to give you the information.
So, but those are the things that were brought up, and that's, you know, the response basically said, as I, in their statements, that I'm directing how they appropriate or spend the money, which I'm not. You know, I'm just asking budgetary questions, like to know information ahead of time for a change instead of waiting till the end of the fiscal year. To be honest with you, this report here is really, yeah, this report here doesn't become valuable to us until maybe the last quarter of the year, because until we know where all the actuals are gonna end up, it doesn't really tell us a lot, except for actuals against budget. You know, I would like for a different type of performance report from the Board of Education. You know, I've asked Kevin to do that, you know, but I haven't really come to any kind of, you know,
Like what kind of?
I don't know. I don't know, but does it tell us much, Jerry?
Well, we do have certain limitations put on
Yeah,
us by state
understand.
statute. We appropriate their bottom line and that's it. I mean, if you're looking for something in more detail than this, because then you would be able to take your $50 million and see what they originally budgeted and what they finally budgeted. You know, maybe that's something we can work out to find the details that you wanna see beyond some level that's here. But
No,
I
understand.
think it's a workload issue too. Because if we went to Kevin and said, okay, the year is over, tell me how things changed from what you originally asked for to what we originally gave you. I mean, there's a lot of detail that goes into, you know, coming up with something like that. So I can sympathize with both sides of it, and my suggestion would be is if there's gotta be at some level a push the button report that has more detail than this, and if they don't wanna share it, well, that could be a problem, but
Can't you just push
I
a
mean-
button and get a year-end variance report,
The accounting.
account by account?
The accounting system is decent, I guess.
I would say that's just a report.
you know, so let everyone have
It's not a
the
lot of work.
information they
It's,
need.
might take a little bit to interpret it, but
Well, I
I
mean,
understand it.
We share with you the budget actual detail by account for the town side. I don't access the Board of Ed system, so I physically don't go into. It's the same technology, but they're not in the same place. The board keeps. its own.
I'm sure they have their own detail, you know, how, you know,
Well,
Yeah.
for all of their State Department of Ed reporting that they have to do, they have to have it broken down by object and function. You know, every other which way, so I.
so I mean, at the end of the day, I'm gonna continue to ask questions, you know, I will officially respond to the email. And maybe I'll even get guidance to say, just to, you know, to support why I'm asking these questions from a budget perspective. I'm not asking them, I'm not telling them how to spend their money, appropriate their money, but it's a valid question, you know? And not only for the Board of Finance, for the citizens. What happens is, you know, the sheet that says I'm gonna make all these cuts gets all the parents riled up. So you're gonna eliminate these teachers, this and this. And then at the end of the day, they operate with a budget that's 2% less and they haven't cut anybody. So we have to be honest with our citizens just as well as being honest with ourselves. And I wanna communicate to our citizens too. And if it's, and bottom line, that's it, it's communication and transparency. That's what I'm looking for.
Sal, can I say something?
Who's this?
Mark.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
For years, both Jerry and I went in to the BOE offices when Cugno was doing the budgets and sat with them and looked at all their detail. You can do that any year. I know they've invited you to do so. I think that's very reasonable for both sides to expect. I do think they have some statute behind them in terms of how much detail they can give you. Frankly, if I was them, I don't know if I would have been as cooperative as they've tried to be. But I would suggest again, when the budget process starts, go in and sit with Ashley and go in and sit with whoever else works on the numbers. And so you have firsthand vision of what they've got. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. I've done it. Jerry's done it. I'm highly recommending you do that.
Okay. I mean, do you have, based on what you're just saying, Mark, do you have any issue with the questions I'm asking in this letter?
No, but I think as we're going through the budget, I think you guys get a little excessive. And maybe Jerry's right, maybe workload's an issue. I don't know Ashley personally at all. I've never dealt with her. I'm literally going back to pre-Ashley and Cugno and when he was doing the budget. So, but again, when the process starts, I think you should go sit in there with them. I really do. It doesn't hurt. You might not like some of what you see, but it doesn't hurt. At least you'll have more knowledge. And then maybe less questions as we're going through the process. I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Yes, and sometimes what happens is by us asking questions, I think they take offense that we're trying to question the need positions or whatever. You know, sometimes we're just trying to get more information, you know, so I think
I think I found a place here.
or how it's presented and, you know, maybe the more we do it, the more familiar everyone is with the process and, you know, it doesn't have to become an adversarial process.
Yeah, and maybe part two of that, I don't, I'm kind of on your side on this. I don't get hung up in this whole chain of command thing. Again, I think I know, you know, Ashley, Brian, on doing the day to day, and Julie, I see you're on, and I'm not making offense to you, but the whole chain of command thing, I personally wouldn't get as hung up on. I just wouldn't. But I'm not the president of Board of Ed either, so I don't want to step on your toes.
Sure. I think that there's a lot of things still up in the air right now, since we're hush, that's a budget. The last few months, I think there's a lot of people are playing a lot of mechanisms in the sense of like, me having to defend myself, and that's exactly what happened here. One thing I'd like to bring back is have these meetings with the DOE in December, January. So friendship, if the shitstorm that it was closer to the referendum, like we all know the expectations are.
I mean,
Are you talking about the 3-board meeting, like nothing at the senior center with the town?
Yeah, but you know what, though, at the same token, the town council have to be in those meetings. Like, you can't be a board of finance and a board of education meeting, like, all right, what are you guys thinking? What are we doing? Because honestly, it was way too much he said, she said stuff for 2.5 months. Where honestly, the parents got caught in the middle, and I was one of the parents. It's like, people are talking there, and then numbers are coming here, numbers are
well,
coming there.
to be honest with you, that even those kind of meetings is too top level to, you know, it's too top level where you really don't get anything done, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
So you don't want
the
to.
problem is we're dealing generally with that budget, you know, I mean, they came in with a 5% budget. I mean, to discuss a 5% budget. You know, I mean, where do you start? You know, I mean, we know it's not gonna be a 5% budget, you know,
My
so.
biggest problem with everything was honestly the superintendent and board having two different. And
Raul, can I also say
yeah,
something
Mark, please.
to you as well? I think you need to get your side much better in order, because the super comes in with a number, the Board of Ed gives us a number. Then you have parents out there running around looking for a different number. And then we talk about what we can afford numbers. So you have people all over the map arguing for different numbers, and you look ridiculous. You do. Parents are arguing for 5.8 last year, and we need that. And the super saying, no, we can do 3. Like, you got to get your act together on that side also.
But
See, it's nice. It's nice being the old guy about to retire.
One, who will lead, and two, all the numbers that were spoken, were not spoken by quote unquote us. It was the superintendent going to PTO meetings and saying it.
No, I know, but Raul, you voted for 3.0 first go round, if you remember.
I came down from 3.5, if you remember.
I do, but you voted for 3.0, then you reneged on that, and then you had a parent group. It had a parent group up your backside saying, no, we need the max. Like, I just think everybody's got, you got to get everybody on the same page.
For 3.6. Actually went, right? It was a good negotiation.
I think part of that, Mark, is a combination of it's not really the parents as much as what's being communicated by the Board of Education to the parents. If they're saying we're starting at 5.8%, and then they say we're gonna make all these cuts, the parents are gonna react. When they don't have to make all those cuts,
Sorry, Sal.
because they don't need to make those cuts, then
Thank you, Sal.
don't let the, don't let the parents overreact immediately when.
Which is a different.
Hold on a second, Mark. 4 days before the first referendum is when the document came out with the proposed cuts. 4 days before the referendum, that was the only communication given. It came out on a Friday, the vote was on a Tuesday. And until at that point, it was still in this paper, says we need this number. And it was not made by quote unquote us. It was people going to the PTO meetings and saying it. And the same Board of Education meetings, they were saying it. So it's not an us, them kind of thing. It is what it is. Thank you.
But you guys are making my point for me. The super's got a number, the Board of Ed has a number, the parents have a number, and the Dems have a number, and none of them met in anywhere.
Mark, the parent's number is the number that was communicated to them.
And I hear you. I guess I don't want to get into parents and this, whatever. I want to stay from a board of finance.
But you know what, though, this is exactly the same problem. We're still rehashing stuff from months ago, and it's coming back to bite us again, excuse my French, in the ass with these letters. Everybody's playing defensive games, Butch is sitting down and talking. Everybody. And here we are, we're doing it again in the meeting.
I don't agree with that necessarily. The purpose of my letter is that I want a formal response.
I'm not
Period.
saying you did anything wrong.
So I want a formal response so that there's clarity and transparency of what they propose and what we ended up giving them this budget and what did they do with it. Period. Okay. Are there any other? Okay.
On to the fun stuff.
All right, that's Kevin now?
I mean, I will just be very high level and say that the year is starting out solid. Expenditures are in line with where they were prior year and continuing that way. Receipts are solid, reserves continue to be in good shape, health insurance and general insurance. Pension continues to be in decent shape. And the big projects continue to move along. Hopefully everybody's happy with Portage Pass and the 3 road project. It's getting close to the end. The 4 bridge project continues to close out. The scoreboard is up and that project is done. Biscaglia was actively being worked on at the high school. There's a lot of projects going on. I see a little bit of upside currently. I expect those numbers to continue to turn for a couple of months in. I see some upside or some opportunity with electricity. And as I mentioned, we had a couple of vacancies that have emerged, and depending on how quickly we're able to backfill those numbers can continue to grow as well.
I probably missed it somewhere along. The final road bids, did they come in as expected? Or were they, no, the HVAC?
They were largely
Some question and there was some questions about timing of getting the equipment. Did everything kind of work out and come in about where they thought they would, or?
The bids were reasonably close to where they were. The start, there was a rush at the beginning of May to try to get everything approved, special council meetings and stuff like, with the intent of mobilizing in May. It actually mobilized after the 4th of July, basically, so a little bit behind on that timing, but it is moving along.
Did they get done what they wanted to do in the summer for the most part?
I would say probably not as much as they would like. They are gonna be trying to work some second shift to catch up. Do some of that at night. The one thing I will say is you're getting very near the end of the fire alarm upgrades at Griswold and Willard, which are the last 2 schools in town to have those upgraded, so the town will be in really good shape from that safety standpoint with the fire alarm upgrades, which is a positive, and kind of they've been working on that over the last few years, trying to deal with each school.
Question, were you asked for any kind of a couple months ago, and you've done it for us on a couple different time periods where if you laid out fund balance, you laid out different projections of different projects, the HVACs, the police department, and this would be the effect on fund balance, equipment, et cetera. Were you asked to do that with the council in relation to this latest?
With $1 million.
Well, I mean, whatever bond authorization they're
Are they
doing,
interested at
a
all?
million.
No, like I said, the meeting, I was actually just zooming in, it was the first time.
I'm just trying to get, you know, in my own mind, did they do any work to determine that this is the right place to be going or the right amount to be doing? Or consider the fact that we have other projects that we, so,
Not through me.
Okay. Can I ask you to
This wasn't
reinst-
even an agenda item, right? He just threw it out there.
can I ask you to reinstitute something where, okay, now we've got 630 numbers, we've got, you know, we're going down the road to appropriate 920 of that already. You know, I like the way you've done it in the past to say, okay, we've got this project, we could, you know, we've talked about doing them. You know, at one time, we talked about doing $1 million on each of the HVAC projects from cash. You know, we talked at one time $1 million for the police department, you know, but we have other equipment needs and whatever else you know about that we don't know about. So I'd like to see something come back to us so that we're a little better prepared. Because I, you know, there's other people talking about big stuff. We had a problem at the golf course with the bunkers, and the insurance company's been in now. I don't know, you know, they have to do something with the bunkers up there. I don't know if the insurance money is gonna be enough to cover it, or if we're gonna have to bond something to fix those up. I mean, there's more than just what we've talked about, coming down. We've been bonded in a couple years, so we've got some pent up demand. You know, and I think these are the things that we need to start talking about.
I mean, the quick answer to your question is, I was not involved with that, like I said, that was, it was the first time I'd heard it officially. I do know, I believe 2 meetings ago, the board, you guys did speak about bonding, fund balance, et cetera, kind of a balance between the two for the police station, high level, yeah.
Even just some understanding what the cost of money is these days. That whole market's changed too, right?
Yeah, I mean, the municipal bond, if we were to do general obligation bonds, right now that's sitting around 3.5% to 4.5%. I actually just had a conversation today with an equipment finance leasing company. So equipment leasing arm of one of our banks, one of the banks in the area. And, you know, AAA rated as the town is, very strong conditions. Right now, they'd be pegging 4.5% to borrow for that. So higher than it has been. The last time we did bonds was 2020. We were sub 1%, which was ridiculously low. So it's higher, but by long-term standards, not out of whack. So it's still very feasible to borrow at pretty reasonable rates for things that are needed or want.
Did we ever do or get back a detailed bid for all the police station work? Cause that, I think the last minutes I saw.
For the
bid
police
hadn't
station
been brought up.
renovation?
Oh, yeah.
No, the bids, the architect has now completed the bid. He will be meeting with the PBC Thursday, I believe their meeting is, and they will be reviewing. Ideally, they will approve the bid to go hit the street with an intended opening in October.
It's always a funny thing to say, let's appropriate $1 million. We don't even have the bids yet, you know?
The difficult challenge is the bids are only held typically for 60 days.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a chicken and egg type of thing of, you don't want to go, that's why we're trying to do the bond appropriation so that there is an ordinance, the appropriation is there, we have the ability to spend based on what's the bid opening, but the other part of it is, even doing the bond orders, even if the $5 million is out there, and let's just say, for whatever reason, the 3 to 4 million becomes 4.5 or 5 million. That approval to then award that bid would still have to go back to the council. So if the council said, we'll give you the ability to do that, but we don't want you spending 5 million, and it required 5 million. The bond ordinance can be reversed or just sit out there. We wouldn't go forward with the project without the council approving it. So there's sort of a few bites at the apple to get there.
It comes in at 5.1 million, doesn't it all come to a screeching halt? They gotta have to go to referendum.
Yes.
That will take forever.
At this point, we could actually had that discussion today regarding the HVAC, the two HVAC projects, because the state has now released HVAC grant round 2. So those applications have to be in, or they're starting now, they have to be in by the end of the year. But we've already missed the being on the ballot for the November election. That basically was right now, because if you go to print, so it'll be in October, it can be there for absentee ballots.
I mean, you can do a special
You can do a special-
referendum, but if
Or you can wait till April for the budget vote and attach it on to the budget referendum.
So. Say we don't get any more funding from the state for HVAC systems. We also need 2 bonds. For the rest of the elementary schools, right? And what's the work cost total? I'm sorry.
Right now, where we're looking at the project, we're just a little north of $5 million.
So let's say 6 or 7 for however. Well,
I would expect those two to be less. Willard is bigger and older, so I would expect them to be. I wouldn't expect them to be more. Willard also had a little bit of the tile had to be ripped up because it was the one school left with some remediation work that was needed. But I think you probably now offset that with the fact that you have the time value of money. I mean, you wait a year, you wait 2 years. Even if it was identical in cost, that 5 million is probably gonna be 5.5 or 6. Right?
Is there inflation?
allegedly.
So I mean, by 6% last year. And I do know Ashley has engaged with Department of Services, and I spoke with her just today. She was waiting they're supposed to be calling her back, because she wants to get a much better understanding of why the town wasn't selected. So that there's no point in resubmitting the same way. You're gonna just keep losing. She's trying to learn so that whatever that might be, and I suspect funding was one of those reasons, and having the funding, sufficient funding lined up. But she wants to know what they are, which is the right thing to do, so that we can apply differently and have a greater chance of winning.
Do we know how much money is at play? From the state?
I don't.
I mean, in the scheme of things, the money they allocated is nothing.
With
I
the
mean,
exception,
you're looking at a $5 million for one school, I mean. 169 communities, what they allocated was nothing.
the only one that I would say really hit the jackpot with it was Coventry. They received, I believe, 6.5 million. So they really, but I can tell you that John Nelson is probably the loudest town manager championing that cause. They had the whole project lined up, the funding, everything was squared away. I mean, that was a tight package, but even outside of that, even I would say the cities didn't get huge amounts either relative to.
They probably had nothing ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, think of the number of the number of those schools that are in Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, there's just so many of them. That even if you give them a couple $1 million, they, 30 schools or something there.
So our lowest threshold is $11 million on balance. How would it affect us going from bond?
Or lower level, or
Yeah,
the actual dollar amount doesn't affect quite as much as about 40% of S&P's rating is off of managerial oversight. When you think about that, that's your conservative budgeting, it's your cash flow management. So if you establish a policy and then you violate your own policy, that doesn't send a great message. That's probably the bigger challenge, is explaining why should I trust any of your other policies.
yeah, so that we would have to kind of do almost a credit check. Basically.
Either do a credit check or seek a negotiated arrangement. We go to a private placement of the bond.
Yeah.
And those can be negotiated on potentially more favorable terms. You certainly don't have the cost and effort of going out and getting a bond rating. But it needs to be beneficial. You know, if you go out and do a bond, if we did a general obligation bond and we could sell it for 3%, and this equipment leasing bank that I was talking to today said 4.5%, I would recommend the town go out and do a bond, general obligation bond, because 1.5% across $10 million on a bond is, say, 10 years of bonding. That's real money. Yeah, you're gonna have a little upfront for S&P and some marketing costs, but that's real money over the course of 10 years.
Yeah.
If you're narrowed down to 50 basis points or 25 basis points, then maybe you just go out, do the negotiated and move on. That's what I'm trying to get a feel for. Our financial advisor is very good at giving updates on where bonds are selling in Connecticut every month. And this was just an opportunity to kind of kick the tires and talk to some people who are doing leasing with other towns and doing deals and what they're charging for it.
On a good note, got a letter from the Government Finance Officers Association that they're pleased to notify us that the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year ended June 30, 2022 qualifies for GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. So congratulations to you, Kevin, and your team again.
Great job.
It's consistent every year. You guys do a great job, so thank you.
37 years. No, consecutive.
Awesome.
I was there
I
before.
was gonna say, Jerry got probably what, 25 of those?
We were there for the first 29.
So I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you, guys.
So Jerry, what's going on with this? They're terrible, but storm damage?
Yeah, they had, it was about